So the presentation, we start panel 4, data-driven urban landscapes, AI and transhuman art. So very hybrid panel. And while the Pohao is connecting, I will briefly introduce him. Okay, Pohao Chi is an interdisciplinary artist from Taiwan, working across music technologies and arts. He holds master degrees from Goldsmiths University of London and MIT Art Culture Technology program. He recently has initiated also very interesting collaboration projects worldwide, particularly curating the exhibitions in collaboration also with Taiwan National Science and Technology Center and many other partners in Taipei, as well as internationally, including RIXC.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pohao Chi from Taiwan, and today I will present the preliminary research behind my exhibition piece, including its historical and geographical context, as well as the field work conducted. Hydrospheric Sketch is a project inspired by a series of community-based activities in a formerly flooded area named Xizhi in Taiwan. It begins with everyday concerns about water, whether through river, rain, or air we breathe, and explores how these personal experiences connect to larger environmental challenges, reflecting on how water shaped our sensory awareness across individual, community, and urban scales. So first, I want to talk about the weather in Taiwan. So in Taiwan's hot, humid climate, daily life often feel like being in a sauna. So people really rely heavily on dehumidifiers and air conditioner to manage moisture. I moved to Xizhi area because the rent was affordable and I needed a larger space to accommodate my work and equipment. However, the lower cost comes with trade-offs. Higher humidity and constant rain lead to problems like mold growing on clothes and furniture and wet wall rot everywhere. So you can see this is a dehumidifier in Taiwan. I have 4 in my place. I need to pour out the water 2-3 times per day. And yeah, and also this is things I capture it right outside my place. And that's even not during a typhoon, it's just a heavier rain. So it's very humid, you can see. Yeah. And the temperature of water is not that good. Yes. So these pictures were taken during a time when Xizhi was still regularly affected by flooding. Over the past few decades, particularly starting in the 1970s, a series of flood control measures were implemented, including the construction of pumping stations and increasingly taller embankments. Despite of these efforts, the flood infrastructure was overwhelmed by even more severe floods. Each new development was met by heavier rains, making it a continuously challenge for the region to manage its flooding issues. Yes. So let's talk about this area. So Xizhi was originally called another name during the Qing dynasty, meaning where the water returns, reflects the meeting point of river and sea tides. But during the Japanese colonial period, the name was changed to Shuotomo. It means Xizhi in Mandarin. So this change symbolized an intention to manage the area's flooding issue and represented a shift toward modernization and flood control efforts. And so this, when speaking with locals, I often hear about a term, tan-in. Tan-in indicates the gentle sound of the Keelung River flowing over pebbles and sandbanks. This slide shows a book from Qing Dynasty that describes tan-in. This sound, just like orchestral music, once defined the peaceful rhythm of life along the riverbank. Today, so the soundscape has changed. The noise of traffic, factories, and new buildings has replaced the soundscape alongside the river. So no one really knows how this tan-in sounds like nowadays. And so more about this area. Xizhi once thrived as a riverside town, and with industry like coal mining and tea production, shaping its close relationship with water. Before severe flooding became common, the river was a natural part of life, with clean, shallow water running through the town. However, as urban development progressed and flood control measures were implemented, this connection with the river was lost, distancing people from their historical ties to the water. This change in the landscape and lifestyle has sparked my curiosity about how residents relate to their surroundings and what might encourage people to care more about their environment. So in collaboration with local communities, we organized a series of workshops and field trips to invite residents reconnect with the river and become more aware of its presence. Now I will share a video from this is public workshop where participants engage with sound and the environment of the river.
我念戏子国小，然后他后面那个他那个不是教室在最后一排，他后面是基隆河的河，所以打扫时间很喜欢盯着河面发呆这样。
我们带领着学生要去做划独木舟这件事情，那是不是他们可以在这样的观察之下，他们要去清水，然后也能够去理解水，然后水跟水跟戏子是非常有相关的，从以前的生活。
水真是又爱又恨，没错。但是他们因为水的关系，然后在居民之间，他们有很深的情谊，因为那时候真的是需要互相帮助。那也因此，就是整个社区都是有水淹的痕迹，所以这是对于社区自己非常多的一个实际的一个操作，这样子。
我们那天是出了招股，
就是虽然没有很熟，但有住过一小段时间。那它跟台南就是一个很巨大的反差。像我在台南的时候，完全不知道除湿机是什么东西。
然后从小的印象就是一样是除湿机，然后以前的除湿机很老旧，所以就是会有很难听的声音，所以晚上就会伴随那个嘶的电机声睡着。因为我们现在已经对，我觉得可以。
Okay, jump a little bit. So we made hydrophone with contact, like it's a piezo, but we turn it into a waterproof contact mic. We just and then we brought this contact mic to the river.
“各式各样的水都充斥在生活里面。可能有人听过说戏子以前会淹水，或者说知道戏子就是一个很容易下雨的地方。然后也蛮常会有人听到有人在抱怨说，戏子好像衣服都会自己发霉，衣服会自己长青苔，墙壁会长青苔这些抱怨。那其实就会发现说，水是一个日常生活中就是在戏子很重要的一件事情。说大家对于视觉上面的水可能都还蛮熟悉的，但是对于水的声音，好像是大家比较少讨论的事情。 或者说，声音的源头从哪边来？有点像再回去抓这个，就是水的声音，或者是关于水的记忆的根源在哪里？
意思。那从哪里回返？南边的人都会说，就是从我湾，所以归湾。
So last part.
就是很安静，然后有一点溪水的声音，有一些鸟叫声，但就觉得原来环境就是往下走可以变那么安静。
Really surprising, at least for me, how this type of microphone, yeah, how it only captures the sound beneath the surface in the water, but not the surface of the water. Yeah, I was expecting to be very clear about.
掉水上的声音，对，觉得它比较是就是接触式的，所以就是只有水下碰触的声音。
SMITE 旁边其实是一条水沟，然后所以是会有那种水泥跟铁的水沟的那个网子，然后会觉得说好像那边都没有人去，可是其实看到不少居民或者是去散步的人会走那边，然后就会有咚咚咚或是叮叮当声。
耳朵听的东西。
Yes. So, yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah. And yeah, so during the project, we also visited numerous hydrological nodes in this area where infrastructure like pumping stations and floodgate are densely located. So the connection between large and small scales of water regulation became a central theme of this project, linking the infrastructure of the city to the daily life of its residents. And actually, it's not that easy to get that closer to the river because we build like embankment. So you need to find a safe place to like cross all the barrier, and then you can cross to the river. And yeah, you saw the pumping station, different kind of facilities. And so why here has such severe flooding? The Keelung River, the river named Keelung River, it was straightened between the 1960s and the early 1990s to create more land for urban development. So the yellow line is the original river, and now we straightened it. So while the project succeeds in creating more space for expansion, it also caused increased flooding in downstream area like Xiji. So the consequences were so harsh that traditional flood control measures such as pumping stations were no longer effective. And as the government was unable to handle the worsening floods, they turned to a more daring solution, the Yuanshanji Flood Diversion Project, which finished in 2005. This massive infrastructure, since almost as a modern engineering marvel, evolved constructing a tunnel almost 30 kilometers along through the mountain all the way to the sea to divert excess flood water to the ocean. So you can see it's like from here to there. It's a tunnel, very big. And yeah, so after that, we don't really have such severe flooding anymore. But yeah, and also definitely we visited that tunnel. They even built a virtual version, so you can actually, on their website, you can enter the tunnel. But however, because of climate change, so in 2022, Typhoon Nisat caused significant flooding again in Xiji area, despite the protections offered by this diversion project. Yeah, and so yeah, the flood control system now in place are invisible yet essential, protecting the city from flood. But this construction has also cut us off from the rivers that once defined this area. So the river is no longer something we live with daily. It's something we control from a distance. So as Jala Tufik argued, disaster not only cause physical damage, but also erode cultural memory. The sound of Tanyin, the gentle string sound, once a hallmark of Shiji's identity, has now faded from both our auditory landscape and cultural consciousness. So as part of the project, I used AI-generated visual to explore the history by recreating the flood memories shared during interviews with local residents. The slightly blur and ambiguity in the AI-generated visual capture the essence of how we remember past disasters, as these memories are often fragmented or not entirely accurate, yet they carry the weight of collective trauma, shaping a shared sense of community. Yeah, I used wrong way. And yes, so this is AI-generated visual are juxtaposed with actual footage of hydrological infrastructure, field recordings, and installation designed to evoke a sense of humanity. Together, these elements form a sketch that bridge personal memories of flooding with the evolving urban landscape to respond to the ongoing entanglement between people and water. So, yes, and during the workshop we made a local elementary school teacher who transformed the mud from past floods into ceramics. And we did another workshop to invite people to use flood mud to craft humidifiers. So, and then to conclude this presentation, I want to introduce the installation, which brings together different elements of the project. As you can see, we have a dehumidifier, a humidifier made with flood mud, and a sensor module that measures environmental changes in real time. So the installation features a background sound created. We use Max NXP, simulating the sound of water stream. When water droplets fall within the installation, they trigger ripple effects on the screen and activate audio recording collected during the workshop, the video I just showed. So in all this is exploration, I view the attempts I have shared as an evolving process to better understand the relationship between humans, water, urban development, and the natural environment, as an inquiry into how we navigate and reshape this is entanglement, both on personal and collective levels, and probably can point out an alternative future for Xizhi area. Thank you.
So much water.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like immersed already in this humidity.
Yeah.
It's just curiosity. There's no scientific or any artistic, but are there caves in the region as well?
Caves.
Caves.
Yeah. Because there used to be a mining, like coal mining site. So there are still some caves built for coal mining. Yes. Yes. But now it's all abandoned.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then I guess that what you see is the interaction of the human I would say pounding on the landscape.
Yeah, true. And also it's a satellite city of Taipei, our capital. So it's not so like people not really live there. People live there, they work and like do everything in Taipei city. So we don't really have any, I don't know, like no bookstore, no art museum, no cultural event in that area. But it's just like more factory industrial sites. So some artists, they rent their studio there because they need more space.
Yeah. Actually, the word is violence. It's violence against the environment, you know, the ecosystem. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's
yes. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's really great the link you make with cultural heritage too, because you know, and with the sound, it's like that's intangible heritage.
Yeah.
You know, the memories of this sound that they're talking in the video, that's intangible. So it's like gone.
Yeah.
Okay, so we invite next participants. So the one next is online, and then we are following on site. Yeah. Arturo Romero CARNICERO currently teaches at the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, where he coordinates the French-German double masters between KIT and ENSAS. He is an award-winning architect and lecturer, and his research combines professional practice, curatorial work, filmmaking, and extensive writing, exploring the intersection of cultural and ecological processes in the public realm.
Thanks for inviting me to this festival. I'm an architect, lecturer, and researcher at KIT and MÜHL, and I'm working in the intersection of speculative design, digital mapping techniques, and hybrid nature cultures. Researchers use complex data analysis, but they are seldom confronted with design duties. Designers, on the other hand, have not integrated data science in their design workflow yet. My work tries to build bridges between them through data literacy. This work concentrates in a specific theme, a method, and a tool. The theme is nature, or natures admitting the difficulty to find only one idea of it. Architectural narratives, heritated from Le Corbusier at the beginning of the 20th century, are not a good example. As Iñaki Ábalos said about the modern movement, they admire nature, but never establish an equal relationship with it. The only possible position was that of a fetishist peep show without any contact. Dualities such as nature city or nature artificial are really left behind, and we embrace Donna Haraway's idea of nature cultures, merging technology, human and non-human. Those hybrid nature cultures are embedded in a web of interconnections, the mesh, as Timothy Morton described them. The method is speculation, a form of describing possible futures that help us to understand our present. Rather than solution-oriented design, imagine speculative scenarios to describe the problems that urban nature face now. Anthony Dunn and Fiona Raby define speculation as an activity where conjecture is as good as knowledge, where futuristic and alternative scenarios convey ideas, and where the goal is to emphasize implications of mindless decisions for mankind. The tool is mapping, using data science to analyze information produced, collected, and transmitted by pervasive technologies. The historian of technology Antoine Picon reflects that, like landscape, cities are changed by digital tools, though not as much through the direct transformation of physical attributes as through the new perspective from which they are envisaged. Digital mapping tools seem to transmute the very matter to which they are applied. With all these three threads, I have waved the conceptual corpus of my PhD, speculative design with urban nature, interpreting computational data. Through the analysis of students' exercises, I inquire how speculative practices with urban nature change through the introduction of spatial data analysis. The following example is one of these exercises. This work deals with nocturnal ecosystems and night pollution. It is located in the center of the city of Karlsruhe, the circle around the castle. The students were first interested in light pollution and how it affects plants and animals in the city center. The situation of the area of study, the circle, is an extraordinary case. Lighting is at its highest levels due to monument illumination, as well as recurrent events such as fairs or the Lichtspiele that you can see here. In contrast, the darkness of the forest of Hartwald arrives to the very city center of Karlsruhe, where the castle is. This particular condition is clearly visible in the aerial night image of Karlsruhe. The most illuminated spot cohabitates with the darkest point of the city center. The resolution of the aerial night image is not enough to inquire the night landscape of the area. Thus, the acquisition of the position and power of all public lamps was superposed with different scenarios of use. The result is a topographic map of light in circle, a nocturnal landscape of bright lights and deep darkness. How do people behave in this area at night? Analyzing geotagged images posted on social media help to understand the patterns of people's behavior, approaching along the north-south axis, avoiding the forest, and using the gardens at the earliest hours of the day. A similar analysis of nocturnal animal observations also identifies non-human presence in the same areas. These observations are sorted out hour per hour and classified by animal family and type. The results are various, from owls and bats to frogs, spiders and virus moths and insects. The initial idea was to see how light pollution negatively affects these species and protect them, but the data analysis revealed an ecosystem in a dynamic balance. More than 60% of all living creatures are nocturnal. They are disturbed in the nocturnal activities such as pollination, reproduction, or foraging, and they are dazzled by all the light blended displays, distracted and irritated. Behavioral changes occur, shifts in predator-prey relationships, and decimation of habitats occur. Light pollution, though, brings benefits for some animals. This is particularly the case for animal species that live on insects that are attracted to artificial light at night, near street lamps or brightly lit buildings or shop windows. All these animal species find a richly laid table around the light sources. Spiders, for example, have learned to build their webs right there, or hedgehogs, frogs, toads, and some species of mice, among others. Certain species of bat can also be found in these places, which do not shy away from artificial light sources and hunt flying insects in the glow. Any half-dead or dead insects and insect remains left on the ground in the morning are eaten by birds, spiders, and ground beetles. These high concentrations of insects has lasting consequences for the food webs and the predator-prey relationship in the entire ecosystem. Once identified the friction zones, the speculative scenario can be formulated. What if the cohabitation of light and darkness is a driver for a thriving ecosystem? Can we imagine urban prototypes that host nocturnal cohabitation and fosters interspecies encounters and exchanges? Prototypes that exchange energy, light, information, nutrients. Prototypes that host symbiotic interspecies relationships. Which landscapes do these prototypes generate around them? How do humans interact with these prototypes and its surrounding ecosystem? How can these prototypes contribute to new forms of built nature cultures in the intersection of digital information, speculative design, and the urban biosphere? Beyond specific result in the work, the focus lays in the radical change of the architectural design practice through the introduction of speculative mapping. As the landscape architect James Corner said, mapping is an active agent of cultural intervention, perhaps the most formative and creative act of any design process. Thank you very much.
Hey there, thank you very much for your beautiful presentation. I'm wondering, have you contacted maybe somebody or shown your work to the governmental side? Because this is a really huge topic which is directly connected with them and their work as well. Yeah, thank you.
I haven't, unfortunately, because I think this was a very, very short shot. But I think this idea of the ecosystems of night is a very interesting topic for cities. We're always talking about animals and cohabitation, and we always imagine that during daytime. But 60% of all animals are nocturnal. Maybe that's a path that we will pursue in our next works, and we are thinking to use maybe different tools to get a better sense to that.
Hi Arturo, Jens here. I'm asking your question because I know that you're also working with spectrogrammetry, and I mean different insects have different wavelengths that they perceive in. Are you also distinguishing different lights? I mean, there is different lights, especially when it comes to artificial light. And how far can you trace which insect, which kind of spider, other animal is benefiting from which light frequency? Because this obviously in this interspecies encounter will play a role. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be the natural next step to this work. When we imagine this kind of prototypes that I haven't shown, it's just like the idea of them. We were imagining them as devices that could effectively have different sources of light that would lead to different spectrums, that would lead to different species to be attracted or to be encountered at that place. But that has not happened yet. That is an interesting field. If you know anyone at KIT that can help us or somewhere else, I'm very happy to get in contact with them, because that's the logical next step to this project.
How did you get all the information and data about all those animals which live in Karlsruhe?
There is so I don't know if you know the idea of citizen science, so the people becoming sensors for cities. The most funny thing of citizen science that it started in Cornwall when people were starting to look at birds and see how, if they were migrating, there was trouble with birds. And that was like the very much start. Right now, there are platforms. There's not only this one. This information came from iNaturalist. There is a platform where you can capture observations of animals around the world. But there are a lot of different ones. There are very interesting ones that are becoming a way of gamification, where instead of looking for Pokemons on cities, groups of people start to look for animal or plant observations, and the rarest are the ones that get most points, and that creates a kind of a community gamified way of observing nature.
Thank you very much. Okay, and we move to next presenter. So Miguel Paredes Maldonado. Okay, Miguel is the head of Edinburgh School of Architecture and Landscape Architecture at the University of Edinburgh, Scotland. He is a chartered architect and a partner in award-winning research and design studio. His research also includes writing speculative design and architectural practice. His work has been published and exhibited internationally, most notably at the 11th and 16th editions of the Venice Biennale.
Okay, thank you very much, Rasa, for this very kind introduction. I guess I will draw on further on some of the points that Arturo has made, and I will talk about Karlsruhe again, and I think there's a lot of Karlsruhe today. I guess as a full disclosure, Arturo and I are friends and have worked together in Karlsruhe and elsewhere for a number of years already. But I guess as an architect, I'm quite interested in the role and the potential of technology in acquiring and producing spatial knowledge, and especially in relation to the urban field. So I investigate digital data as a form of urban infrastructure, as it were, and in so doing, I have done research into computational models of urban knowledge, which I use in turn to describe practices that account for data as the raw material of urban projects. But I could describe my work, I guess, as an epistemological framework that is primarily activated through making. So I write, but I also build stuff. I tinker with electronics. I build DIY apparatuses, and then I try to understand how they see the things that I ask them to represent for me. So I'm interested in the kind of perspective of these devices that I build and how they draw and what they see when they draw things for me. I have often drawn from the writings of philosopher Gernot Böhme, who certainly was not guilty of being a technophile by any means. But he explained how, very, very vividly, I think, how technology and its technical modes of knowledge have become the chief infrastructural platforms that shape our social field and our cultural landscape. He talked about the technostructure of society. So I have building on these ideas to investigate, I guess, a key component of this technostructure, the layers of data-driven technologies and computational processes that shape our built environment across all scales. So this is something that Arturo has already been talking about. But as Böhme himself noted, the greater the amount of social regulation that takes place via data management and data processing, the more people and things only count as part of society to the extent that they can be defined in terms of data. So what can be defined in terms of data? So of course, I've been focusing on the paradigm of embedded and digital urban sensing, and the idea that there's a systematic and distributed and collective collection of data that pertains to social and environmental conditions in the city. And I also look into the processes of assembling these data collections into visual computational narratives. And I guess I look into the politics and the ethics of these sort of processes. Because this describes very well a paradigm that's already, I guess, an old paradigm, an outdated paradigm, that smart cities that have been, I guess, updated or supercharged by the idea of a digital twin. So there's this idea that you could, say, make a fantastic digital model of Riga with so much data from all sorts of sources of data, and it would be so amazingly complete and exact and rigorous and true that whatever happens to the model happens to reality. So there's this kind of almost crazy idealism, the idea that, you can, just because you have a lot of data, you can automatically turn that into insight. And I really contest that. But I think this is a really interesting example of this extreme worldview. But I guess there's a key critique here, because technification and technostructures through computational processes in these sort of digital twins and smart cities are often managerial, they're top-down, they tend to solve problems, and their focus in a way is on developing narratives of performance, as it were. But in contrast, I would like to talk today about other sensing practices that seek to highlight coexistence rather than performance, and therefore they seek knowledge rather than optimization, whatever optimization means. So I've been working in Edinburgh, in Cagliari, and other places, but today this project is about remapping the urban field in Karlsruhe from the perspective of its non-human inhabitants, animals, plants, and things alike. So in other words, the intent of this computational urban practice is to be a vehicle to manifest or increase collective awareness of the entangled fragility of our ecosystems. So I'm putting forward in a place like this, and I think I'm very interested in this image, again, because it's a cartographic depiction of urban idealism, and I think there's an interesting contrast here. But I'm putting forward an active model or an apparatus of digital urban sensing that brings both human and non-human perspectives of urban life in Karlsruhe into a public conversation. So there's three questions here. Perhaps, can we imagine how weeds and moss or ants and birds experience the urban environments that they share with us? Can digital sensing help bring human and non-human perspectives of urban life into a public conversation? And what are the potentials of technology in the production of non-hegemonic forms of urban knowledge? So to that extent, I draw from the theories of urban hacking, the idea that you can use digital media to open up things for systemic change. And critical making, the idea that by making, physical making, you pursue critical thinking. So this entails deploying a Raspberry Pi, a DIY apparatus that I built from off-the-shelf parts that works as a sensing instrument. It records and captures a range of sensory and environmental data, so temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure, but also sonic and visual snapshots of the immediate environment. So it performs as a sentient computational object that surveys the fringes of small natural spaces in the city and tunes it to non-human entities that inhabit the urban milieu by focusing on visual, sonic, and environmental data that are outside the ranges of human attention, perhaps not perception, but attention. And in so doing, it tries to unfold an upturned urban field where the perspectives of weeds and moss and ants and birds are in an equal ontological footing as those of people in the city. So it's engineered as an adaptation to the urban landscape, really, and the orientation of the sensors, the configuration of the envelope, the articulation of components are as important as the digital sensing capabilities. So this is not a project about rigorous sensing. So I working with this device, and often with Arturo by my side, I surveyed the fringes of 16 small, very small natural spaces in the city of Karlsruhe. So the presence of the device is inconspicuous. It's not invisible, but it's not calling attention to itself either. It's installed in public spaces where there's a presence of people and a substantial component of urban nature, more or less domesticated, like in this case. So the idea is to develop a fine-grained register of how these two aspects exist together and how they encounter. So this is a bit of a durational performance, as it were. The device is installed and remotely activated. It records sensor, cameras, microphones at scheduled intervals of 3 to 5 minutes. Each interval entails a 5-second audio clip, a digital camera picture, a 5-second thermal camera video, and a log of a GPS location, temperature, humidity, and atmospheric pressure. So there's a kind of rhythm, a durational rhythm to it. So the device is there for hours on end, and it is connected to the internet. So you can communicate with smartphones using Telegram, and it will kind of get back to you. It will reply, it will say hello. In a way, it has, I think, an ontological implication in as much as it helps situate the digital sensor as a third component in this conversation between humans and non-human natural environment, as it were. This was complemented with a desktop survey, again, going back to the top-down question and a subsequent data scraping. As Arturo has noted, humans are very good sensors of themselves and of other things. So you can tap, for instance, of bike map, human-related activity, bicycle routes that we log very, very thickly in a place like Karlsruhe, walking routes from OpenStreetMap, animal and plant sightings like eBird and Naturalist, these massive, massive scientific databases. I guess this says more about the human population collecting the data than the non-human populations that are being collected there. So it's quite interesting. So after a period, I guess, of desktop research, the task, these are just some snapshots of these kind of desktop survey maps. And as you see, the thickness of the information is quite astonishing when you overlay human and non-human recordings. It's quite interesting. And again, the patterns and the concentrations that emerge, perhaps, I think, say more about human presence or human understanding of the natural world, whatever it is, than anything else. But these data eventually was, for these 16 sites, was collected and collated into an atlas of 16 plates, detailing potential sites and interactions between natural life and social life in the city. So the plates, I guess, compress the axis of time and fold it into one single moment of simultaneity. So they're kind of time stretching things. And they speculate with potential for some of the events and environmental conditions that have been mapped to take place concurrently. They consider these simultaneities as potential close encounters, hence the title. There's some additional outputs, and I hope this will work. Yeah. Which is a collection of 20 videos that collate the time, visual, and sonic-based stimuli collected by the sensing device through its short-range microphone and thermal camera. This is really DIY. So they compress hours of stationary presence on each site into 3-minute clips. And the videos, I guess, remove any anthropomorphic visual cues, although you're seeing people there, and displays the focus of sonic environmental attention. So they explore the ways in which the computational device may experience the world. So wind, insects, and bird song are really deafening. They occupy the oral foreground. Human voices are muffled and they're unintelligible in the background, and there's immediate modulations of the rumble and flutter of the human city. So a tram is suddenly a kind of seismic event, but it's incomprehensible. I will just allow this to play for a bit. Of course, the work is heavily drawing from Bruno Latour's narrative of the critical zone, the idea that we all together inhabit a very thin segment of this of a very thick earth crust. The idea that we exist in codependency in this shared zone, and that the living environments are co-generated and interrelated, and they cannot be really extricated from one another. And when we try to do it, it's impossible. Critically, Latour told us that these environments are not static, of course, and they emerge from interactions over time. It entails a radical change of perspective in regards to what constitutes collective life in a city, in an urban ecosystem, and it runs contrary to any readings of the city as an entirely human construction, as it were. It seems clear to me that human and non-human beings are equally deserving agents in this making of the collectivity. I guess I have also framed this work as manifestations of what Donna Haraway refers to as contact zones, the idea that there are boundaries between domains inhabited by different subjects. Sorry, am I doing with time? 2 minutes, okay. So usually from different species. So contact zones here are not just spatial boundaries, but they also encompass other relationships and forms of communication that may emerge between subjects at stake. So when we build contact zones or areas for close encounters, everyone has to develop adaptations and predispositions, and they have to raise opportunities for mutual encounter. But beyond these two very well-known concepts, I would like to draw our attention perhaps to David Gitson, an architect, the idea of subnature, which focuses on the ground condition, not as an immaterial layer that indicates a binary shift in level, either below or above. And see this device is always on the ground, very close to the ground, and it has a kind of very particular perspectival approach. So subnature is here a thick and an intrinsic component of the urban environment, which has its own dynamics and forces that are negotiated with the built fabric of the city. So as Gitson notes, subnatures are somewhat denigrated matters and experience, yet worth recovering. And perhaps this is what this body of work is trying to consider. So it highlights vectors of coexistence and interdependence, and it tries to allow human and non-human domains to engage in conversation by providing a framework of computational mediation, as it were, across their different phenomenological perspectives. So it's about fostering digitally mediated encounters between objects, species, and entities that are human and non-human alike. So perhaps I will finish very quickly with a small clarification. Of course, there's no claim for scientific objectivity here, and I feel compelled to clarify this. There's no claim for numerical rigor. This is not what the work is about. There's a subjective quality to this work, and because precisely its goal is to capture subjectivities, perspectives of non-human subjects. This is something that perhaps in other fora I have had to clarify. If you talk about to urban planners, you have to be very careful with these sort of things. So the insight that this is trying to unpack today are primarily based on difference and variation and overlaps in time and space across very, very fine-grained, small range circulations or trajectories in the city. I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
No, this is like this is gonna sound like a crazy question, but as you were talking and presenting all these like narratives that I just thought, okay, so what could this tell us about history? At this point in time. Of course, there's many also, I think that there's many interactors and, many entities involved in the dialogue. So, yeah.
I mean, I guess this could tell us, or I feel this tells us a lot about human history or human narratives or history. And again, I would perhaps draw our attention to this plan of Karlsruhe as a kind of perfectly delineated circle where kind of nature is encompassed in sectors, which are, just a precise number of angular degrees. And I think, along with the questions of cartography and natural history, I think the work really tries to play with the friction between this idealism or this human intent to encapsulate nature as a category and the impossibility of doing that when we think about this in kind of current paradigms. But there's also, to me, and also coming from my own field, in the history of planning and the built environment, this I see as a very heavy critique to things like, digital twins. Or I guess what I try to say is it's the impossibility of a digital twin and the impossibility of exactitude. One thing that happens here, for instance, in this mapping of the devices, as it stays there for hours on end, the GPS signal is jittery. So it's never, according to itself, it's never in the same place. It's not moving, I can tell you, it was always in the same place. So there's a kind of noise and stability and jitteriness that's very unhuman, as it were, or at least it's not the kind of jitteriness that we as humans like to admit exists in the world. Sorry, I'll stop here.
Portrayed it now and spoken about it is, you know, the big contribution from, you know, an artistic perspective is precisely that subjectivity that then, you know, it reveals all this other. Yeah. They would not be there if everything was like, quote unquote, rational. It would not be allowed. Yeah.
Yes. There are also questions of scale here, of course, and these are really, really small spaces. And, you know, it makes you wonder to what extent can you encompass the real with these sort of cartographic systems?
Oh, yeah, the scale is one of the things which I think is so interesting in especially how you architects work, because we artists, we go usually very, very close to something, also even like to like a phenomenon like water in the previous presentation. Yeah, so how you think about the scaling, especially if you want to, like to monitor something like as small as this non-human activities. So, but does it? Can you imagine working also like how the scaling happens in your research? Then, how close you can go?
That's a very interesting question, because as it stands now, the body of work is either very focused, either it describes essentially a planter or a small patch of land in Karlsruhe or a very small garden, or it describes the city as a whole, and there doesn't seem to be a kind of intermediate position in between. And I guess that's something I'm trying to investigate at the moment. How do you negotiate these two things, which to me also presents two very different ontological points of view. They're almost opposite, not just because of the scale, but because of the kind of ontological perspective that they bring into the mix. I guess as an architect, you always work in this kind of intermediate scale. Yeah.
It's very interesting. And just referring to the question, which was also previously, so do you think city planners would be interested, institutions like municipalities could be interested in your research?
I think very much like Arturo, I would like them to be interested. I'm not so sure if the structures that they work with, you know, can absorb this sort of information.
Do they have non-human departments? Probably not yet.
Very often the non-human departments have to do with greenwashing and you know, building green facades and this sort of things, which, yeah.
Planting some trees, not counting butts yet.
But if you put your landscape architecture hat on your head, what would you say about this work?
Well, perhaps that's much more interesting, being a landscape architect here. I guess it's the idea of encountering, the idea that you could be, and I do think that has interesting practical implications. The idea that you could be riding your bike, one of these green lines over, you know, at the top right, you know, on your way to work or back home, and you will be aware that something in a particular patch of land may happen. So if you just drop your bike and park it, if you just as an urban planner allow for a place to sit down close to the ground and to lock your bike and for someone to stay there calmly, essentially you're building places for encounters with others, and they're very simple, and you barely have to build anything. So yeah, it's the encountering of others that's exciting to me.
Okay, so we are now inviting next speaker online, Sebastian MÜHL. So Sebastian is research assistant at CHDK Zurich University of Arts and senior researcher at the Research Institute, which LMDA at the Art Academy of Latvia, which is the Institute for art design and architecture. So he studied philosophy and fine arts in Munich and Leipzig and holds a PhD in art and media studies from Offenbach University of Art and Design. And in 2022, he was a digital curator of the Dresden State Art Collections, where he launched the exhibition platform Voices. And his book, Utopien der Gegenwartskunst, or Utopias of Contemporary Art, History and Critique of Utopian Thought in Art After 1989, was published with transcript in 2020.
Yeah, so thanks again, and I hope you can see and hear me well. Considering the online format of my talk, I will try to give a really condensed version of my initial paper, which deals with artworks that I'm currently investigating as part of my postdoc in aesthetics, art and culture at Radica in Zurich and at the Art Academy of Latvia in Riga. So maybe just to say one note about my disciplinary background, I'm really a scholar in contemporary art and visual culture, and so my talk will possibly be a little bit different as regards to the previous presentations, but I hope it will blend in a way. So as you all know, digital technologies are deeply transforming the ways in which contemporary art is produced, distributed, and experienced today. There are countless artists that are dealing with virtual realities, the metaverse, speculative imaginaries of avatars, as well as multi-sensory spaces of experience, in order to push the limits of subjectivity and to reformat experiential forms of our daily lives. Few artists, however, are doing that in such playful ways like the London-based art collective Kaiken, which I would like to present to you today. Kaiken is a collective co-founded by Tanya Cruz, Hannah Omori, and Isabel Ramos in 2015, and they predominantly work with interactive gaming, filmmaking, performative installation, XR, VR, but most recently also with AI. So their ongoing prototype interactive game Morphogenic Angels, which you can see here, is the group's most considerable work to date, and it's an online multi-user online game that elaborates on a speculative futures where humans have gained morphic upgrades that re-engineer them to have transhuman capabilities. The work is basically inspired by transhumanism and cyberfeminism, and it's particularly interesting when you're engaging with fictional narratives on speculative futures and the various implications of avatars and their politics of visuality. It is presented, as you can see here, on large exhibition screens in gallery spaces and accompanied by an immersive spatial installation and a CGI film. The core element, however, are the game's avatars, and the most striking analytical aspect that I'm also interested in researching and in presenting to you today is how these avatars depict and reconfigure imaginaries of transhuman interspecies identity, but also connect them with an idea of transcultural hybridity. So as my time is limited, let me just provide you some ideas that I find paramount regarding this complex of ideas. One of the most interesting features is that Morphogenic Angels conceives of avatars as highly indeterminate hybrid subjects which imaginatively interfere on a symbolic and figurative level into ideas of identity formation, which I would call métissage. This is interesting since many debates on avatars generally privilege, as you will probably know, privilege questions of agency and embodiment over representation and visuality, but also because the politics of identity of avatar representations are nowadays regarding online digital spaces often discussed in terms of an expanded display of difference that rather exploits identity as neoliberal desire or as in terms of self-branding, and does not take into account its subversive potentials for non-hegemonic representation. So I won't have time to go in detail, but let me just make 2 points regarding these avatars in that game. Morphogenic Angels features 2 avatars, Yaku and Anamtul, who dwell in a speculative fantasy world set in a reimagined future 1,000 years from now. They are shaped as transhuman characters, and they explore how we might perceive, feel, and think in the future. The avatars live through different cycles of evolution, and throughout the different chapters, they offer a seemingly endless capacity for change and self-discovery. Yaku, which you can see here, is depicted as a hybrid non-binary character, part human, part horse-like, part elf. He has no memories of the past and constantly asks, "Who am I again?" They convey a sense of uncertainty and imbalance, and when Yaku enters the scene in chapter 1 of the game, they seem scared, full of anxiety, and even unwilling to move on without guidance. As you can see, the avatar is depicted in myriads of blue shining scales, at times mesmerizing in silver and green, which makes the avatar also reminiscent of Neytiri, the famous Pandoran forest character of the Na'vi people from James Cameron's authentic Avatar movie from 2009. In Morphogenic Angels, however, Yaku is said to wander apparently without any purpose, if not to find out about themselves. And when they eventually encounter Anamatul, the second avatar, who's depicted as a female-gendered angel-like being, you can see here, covered in tentacle shapes imprints across her skin, they eventually fall in love and continue their journey together. So very quickly, throughout the whole story, there's a striking visual representation of precarity, and that refers to the rather unstable identity and selfhood of the avatars. This precarity is never really resolved or stabilized. On the contrary, it seems even to be reinforced by various different elements in the game. For instance, the depiction of an unfamiliar atmosphere of the surrounding landscape of the game, which could be grasped in terms, for instance, of the weird, as suggested by Mark Fisher. The avatars also eventually turn their status as avatars into a visual sign of their search for selfhood. And while the speculative world around them remains a fantasy world, much of the narrative and visual makeup is also inspired by personal histories and experiences of the artists, who in fact have diasporic backgrounds and draw on various mixed heritages. In this light, Morphogenic Angels mirrors the idea of cultural hybridity as well, both in narrative and pictorial terms. For instance, I've already said it, the main avatar depicts a vision of métissage. For instance, when the avatar flips from English to Spanish at times, and in his visual makeup, it represents different ideas that could be drawn on this notion of métissage. Métissage as theorized by authors, for instance, like Édouard Glissant. In Glissant, métissage was part of a process that he called creolization, that is a blending of heterogeneous elements without any degrading or lessening of being. The morphogenic angels can be analyzed in these terms as they depict not only an imaginary of interspecies crossbreeding, but also an image, finally, of cultural hybridity. And they do so. That would be one of the points that I would make in almost utopian terms, mirroring the ramification of transhuman subjectivity as transcultural subjectivity, combining ancestral and natural, physical and extraterrestrial, animal and cellular, as well as cosmic features but also mirroring the rather inner-worldly idea of a cultural hybrid subject. So hence, while Kaiken's avatars are at first sight pointing to the idea of transhumanism, the closer you look, they are becoming transcultural figures. And that is what I think is a really interesting aspect of the game, which is also in various different aspects politically relevant, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm already closing on that because I think I have a very short window of time, and this presentation was really just like a short presentation of that work, which for sure in my research is part of a larger project to investigate visual representations of avatars in digital online spaces. Thank you very much.
So thank you for your input, but I think we are going even more deeply into hybridity now. And yeah, that was interesting to hear, yeah, such non-humans as avatars and their aesthetic representations. Okay, so my question maybe would be how you would also try to connect all these different interests of researchers, like connecting one direction was obviously here represented also in this panel was the interest to connect the technologies to explore the nature into very built environments, but real ones like in the cities. So how do you think these avatars can also be, can you ever somehow even to connect these these spaces, virtual, because these are really deeply virtual. So there is not much connection maybe from the natural, like we had in the previous presentations. So what you have to say about it, about these avatars as a representation of, I don't know, transhuman notion?
Well, I think, I mean, like it's a little bit a challenge to connect my presentation to the previous ones, because for sure I was now here referring to online games, which like create a sort of, you know, closed virtual environment, and in at least in this case, it is not. It is not based on a mixed reality visuality, where, for instance, these avatars could also like interact with real physical city environments, or or other spaces. So yeah. I think what I find interesting in this project that I presented to you is that it's really an artistic or aesthetic experiment that is very much you know, based on an aesthetic space. Yeah, it's also a game that is a prototype that is presented in gallery spaces or in theaters. So it does not really interact with the world outside.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. But that's also a good answer, because as for artists, I also have always been thinking about virtual reality and augmented. Augmented always, or mixed, always has seemed very, let's say, practical. Kind of, but for artistic, I think this bit, because you are enclosed in completely virtual, like virtual reality, so you can really just make it opens, I think, much more space for your own imagination. So how you can kind of, I don't know, fly away or use aesthetics which only you decide will be there, you know. So you don't have to interact with the real spaces. Yeah.
This is following also what you just mentioned, Rasa, you know, and to Sebastian is your name, yeah? So, you know, if you have the virtual and then you have the physical, and in games, you're right that in games environment is different because those people involved with games they are always there. It's almost like their, normal place to be. And, but have you thought about what could happen? Because I do think that this is the next step, and how would that be realized when the two actually blend together seamlessly, where, we can, right now, if we have, to show a book turning the pages, we use an animation. In virtual reality, we use an animation. What is it that has to happen so that then it's not an animation, but that there's actually the gesture itself that, how does that connection, how would you see that kind of connection get enacted, that we could actually have, responsive objects inside the virtual world? Is it even possible?
You want to go more mixed, okay? No?
Well, I'm not sure if I can give try to give an answer to this question, because I'm not an expert on the technological development, which is but I mean the direction is pretty clear that that it is questions of people are working on those questions of embodiment and agency through avatars, and it's like just a question of time when those things will be possible and happening. And I mean, there is the metaverse, and there are different versions of the metaverse which are currently being developed, and where avatars are being used and deployed. My interest is there more in this idea of representation. And I think that it is a very messy thing or complicated thing when you think about identity representations in through avatars, and which are already undergoing in social media, for instance, as well, where you can use all kinds of avatars. But this is why why I said that discourse is mainly in this going in this direction, that avatars are a form of branding the self. And I wanted to jump a little bit into another direction with this example which I presented, but I'm clearly aware that it's a fiction. It's a fictional game, and I think for good reasons. This fictional space creates the possibility of thinking about other non-hegemonic forms of representation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. But I think your presentation is really making a nice transition to our next presenter, last one in this panel, Līga VÄLIņa. Līga is media artist and PhD researcher at the Art Academy of Latvia. Her research focuses on extended reality and artificial intelligence tools in art and culture in Latvia and in international contexts. Līga is a lecturer at the Art Academy of Latvia and Riga Technical University, Liepāja Academy as well.
So I'm thrilled to be here and share a small part of my future dissertation with you. And today I will focus on specific case studies in art of Latvia, where virtual reality alongside technological extensions is used to expand our experience and perceptions, even functioning as an extension of ourselves. And the topic of my dissertation is XR technologies in art and culture in Latvia compared with international environment. And in this presentation, I'll be exploring specific case studies of works of art that highlight a techno-positive approach, where virtual reality works as a technological extension of the self. Here is structure of my presentation. And the context and introduction, yes, objectives, definitions, and concepts. So artists often use technology to explore transhuman ideas, reflecting scenarios where technology suppresses nature. And visual reality technology combines storytelling, presence, effect, and the extension of senses like sight and hearing. By integrating motion sensors and other technologies, it fosters deeper interaction between people and technology, creating more immersive art experiences. And while VR is visual reality is often criticized for focusing primarily on sight, there are good examples from Latvian art that show how combining VR with other devices can push the limits of what possible, visualizing the invisible, the inaudible, and even the artist's imagination. So the purpose of the paper is explore techno-positive examples, yes, of transhumanism in Latvian art, and it focuses on case studies where virtual reality alone or combined with other technologies extends human senses and serves as an extension of the self, fostering new existential understandings of the individual and their connection to natural processes. So yeah, here you can see definitions. And the first one, first section is virtual reality and biometric data as an extension of the self. And the case study is the virtual reality installation Sync-In by Ieva VÄLINA, which was exhibited in RIXC gallery in 2019. And it explores self-therapy through an underwater world in virtual reality. And using the mind wave biometric data, reader users control their movement based on their concentration or meditation levels, reflecting the integration of human and technology. And this highlights transhumanist themes where virtual reality and biometrics extend the self, hinting at future experiences combining advanced technologies. And Ieva's VÄLINA's interest in biometric data also led to K100, a performance where biometric data was connected to modular synthesizer, inviting the audience to overlap each other in a data effect, creating a unified sound composition. And so this is not a virtual reality work, but I wanted to mention because yeah, it shows other approaches of Ieva's Ieva's other approaches. So the next one is the role of virtual reality in visualizing mental well-being, and I also collaborated with Ieva in art project Mental Purity, which was part of Ars Electronica Festival in Kepler's Garden, the digital exhibition Planting Resort for Mental Ecology, organized by MP Lab, Liepu Art Research Laboratory. And using data collection methods, we explored daily rituals that impact mental well-being, each creating a 3D data visualization in virtual reality. And these data sculptures also included our self-portraits shaped by generative sequences of analog and collected data. Yeah, and another example is Ieva VÄLINA's work of art, Crows, which was exhibited at exhibition How I Feel Lately in the Museum of Medicine and History, organized by Latvian Contemporary Art Center. And this work uses virtual reality for self-exploration and therapy. And the work emerged from her sessions with her therapist Agnes Orupe, who asked her to visualize her self-critical monologue as a crow, resulting in the immersive VR artwork. And I also interviewed Ieva, and it's actually difficult because Ieva is a good friend of mine, so I have to be objective, and yeah, it's quite difficult. But to understand better this work, I interviewed her with several questions, and Here is a citation, which I will read. In my work, crows are all around because we carry them with us. But at the end, when we get to the swing, the crows fly away. They can be let go when they no longer serve us because healthy internal criticism is necessary to the limit. One of the goals is to understand where these crows motivate and promote growth and where they only peck and lead to despair. So words by Eva Viksne. So next one, case study, what I wanted to mention is Elsa Ozola's bachelor's work, The Gates of Anxiety, and she examined information overload and its impact on the human mind and well-being using photogrammetry and LIDAR technology. She combined deformed everyday scenes into unified virtual environment, creating virtual rooms to explore. And the installation emphasizes the clutter and metaphor for information overload, accompanied by sound recordings, including electromagnetic audio fields that are normally unheard, but exist in parallel. So I still have time. Next section is dream research and visualization, and I will tell more about artist Zane Zelmane and her projects. And first project I want to mention is Simulacrum, which was exhibited also in the RIXC gallery in April 2018. And this artwork invited viewers to immerse themselves in the artist's dreams through augmented and virtual reality. And the artwork visualizes her dreams from memory and speculates that future advancements in brain-computer technology could make it possible to digitally transfer and construct dreams into virtual worlds. So here are also some pictures from the exhibition. And the next one, also in RIXC gallery, is Zane Zelmane's solo exhibition, A Guide to Invisible Landscapes. And Zane explores the idea that dreams may be connected to real events in parallel worlds, drawing inspiration from quantum physics and Hugh Everett's theories. Using virtual reality, she offers immersive experience of alternative coexisting worlds, hinting that a full understanding of these realms may be possible with future technological advancements. And it's also important to mention and highlight Zane Zelmane's practice of transferring virtual objects into physical installations, using prints and objects to address the issue of virtual reality being an individualized, closed experience. And this partial transfer offers visitors, including those who are unable to use VR glasses who are unable to use VR glasses, and it gives this opportunity to have this associative experience of the artist's virtual worlds. Here also an example how it looks like. And the last one is virtual reality as a tool for enhancing human-nature interaction. And I wanted to mention this work that we all know, Atmospheric Forest by Rasa and Schmitz, and it's a virtual reality project that uses point cloud aesthetics to immerse the user in natural data of volatile emissions and resin pressure in pine trees over a season. And through an animation and sound, virtual reality allows users to experience and feel integrated into natural cycle, offering a deeper connection to nature by simulating this phenomena. And it's worth noting that the atmospheric forest was also nominated for Purvisha Award in 2021 and featured in the 8th candidate exhibition at the Latvian National Art Museum. As the only virtual reality work included in the museum's collection, its nomination highlights the growing recognition of technology-based art in Latvia. At the same time, it remains the only large-scale work of its kind using this specific technology as virtual reality, which is included in collection of the Latvian National Art Museum. And conclusions. So, yes, virtual reality is a relatively new technology and generates mixed responses. It is often associated with the metaverse and distancing of humans from their natural state. However, through transhumanist techno-positive thinking, virtual reality serves as a tool to foster new understandings of existence, nature, and invisible, as seen in works like Simulacrum, for example. This technology allows artists to imagine and explore states of mind that are currently inexplicable, such as the digital transfer of dreams in Latvia. A growing community of artists is using VR not only as a creative tool, but also as a means to explore the potential of technology as an extension of the self, offering new ways to visualize the unseen and connect more deeply with the world around. Most of the case studies discussed have been exhibited at RIXC Gallery, and my collected statistics from 2012 to 2022 highlight the RIXC Center as the leading representative of expanded technology-based art, including transhumanist art in Latvia. And the artist's work showcase recurring themes such as Eva Vīksne focus on self-research and mental well-being. Zana Zelmana explores dreams and representation of dreams in virtual reality, and Rasa and Schmitz are researching natural processes and human interdependence. Yes, this presentation outlines the main points of article I'm developing, and it's still in process. Thank you for listening, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you very much, Līga, for your presenting your research. It's really impressive that you have been following so carefully through different stages here in Latvia. I think that's really great, your contribution to it.